All right, it's 10 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you everyone for calling in today. Good morning, Carol Lee from Atascadero. Rain clouds are moving in. If you're joining us just now, we've been talking about the rainy and snowy weather that's covering the United States right now. A little bit of sun, hopefully wherever you are. Thank you again for calling in. We're excited about this webinar today as we dive into coaching human service clients and teenagers, and really moving the conversation about coaching and human services to that of clients, when typically we've been talking mostly about coaching as a professional development method with staff. At least that's how it started mostly in child welfare. I am Nancy Hafer. We're going to go through introductions here in just a minute. We are, if you notice, if you're just joining us, you're going to notice that the chat window is being used a lot right now. We've been asking people to type in where they're from and what the weather was like. So if you see the chat window is moving quickly, feel free to go ahead and type in where you're from, and we'll go through how to use some of the other tools of the Zoom webinar here in just a minute. Let's see. Tammy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh my gosh, there I am. I'm the one on the left. My name is Tammy Sandoval, and I am with the University of Alaska. I'm the Child Welfare Academy director here in Alaska, but also work with the Northern California Training Academy as well. I guess the only thing other than that you'd need to know is I've spent my entire 35 years of my career in child welfare, so that's all I know how to talk about.
And we're really lucky that Tammy has joined us on this webinar today. I'm Nancy, I'm the one on the right. I work for the Northern California Training Academy, an academic coordinator here, and have been working on integrating coaching into our work with child welfare staff and now clients in Northern California, and have been lucky enough to recruit and have Tammy come down and shed some of her experience and knowledge and share it with us here in California. She's got a lot of experience, and thank you, Tammy, for joining us on this webinar today to talk about coaching clients. And one caveat, while Tammy and I both are most familiar with coaching in child welfare, this webinar is dedicated to coaching in human services. So sometimes we'll slip and we'll just say child welfare, but this is something that can be used across systems. So we know that there's a great deal of you who are from other fields and we have a polling question. We'll get to that in just a minute. So we apologize in advance if we just say child welfare. This is the second webinar that we've had in a series dedicated to coaching and human services. The first one we had a month ago and was on the benefits of coaching. The next coaching webinar we will do will be in a month from now, and the date, I had it written down and it's escaped me, but will be focused on brain-based coaching. And Dr. Beth Cohen will be joining us to talk about what's happening in our brains. We're going to touch a little bit on that today, but we're going to dive into the topic much more deeply next month on our next webinar. A little bit of background, just real briefly, we want to cover what the Northern California Training Academy has been doing in the arena of coaching. For those of you who are unfamiliar, we serve 28 counties in Northern California, public child welfare. We offer training on a variety of topics, and really when I say training, I mean workforce development. We spend a great deal of time talking about safety organized practice, continuous quality improvement, trauma-informed services, foundational child welfare practice. And for the last 10 years, we have been taking a deep dive into coaching. and how to really support professionals in the field in growing their practice. And we've learned a lot, and we've learned a lot also from our partners across the country who have also been engaged in this practice, and we're excited to share some of what we've learned. Our coaching specific offerings include everything from coaching institutes for child welfare supervisors, leadership program managers. You can see this list here. We've got coaching the reluctant worker, critical thinking. We've hosted 2 national conferences on coaching and human services. Our next one will be April 2020. We're moving to hosting the conference every other year. This year is our in-between year, and so we're doing this series on coaching and reaching a national audience this way. We've also published a coaching toolkit for child welfare practitioners. It came out in 2012. We are updating it to broaden the scope to all of human services, and look out for that within the next year. And then also it's the bullet number 2, but we have piloted and hosted this year coaching-based case management classes for both child welfare clients and for teenagers or transitional aged youth. And we're really excited about the work that we've done in this coaching field, and we're going to dive into this client notion here more fully today. And then I'm going to go back to, I forgot to mention, if you navigate to our website, the Northern California Training Academy, you will be able to, you'll find a link for the coaching toolkit that you can download a copy of the toolkit for free, a PDF version, or you can purchase one from the UC Davis bookstore. Oops, I went over that too fast. We'd love for you to learn a little bit about our polls and the Q&A section of the Zoom technology. If you look, on your screen, hopefully, a poll is going to show up. I'm going to hit launch polling, and we'd love for you to let us know which role fits you best. So there are these polls that we'll have throughout the day. There's a Q&A tab that you'll see on the Zoom screen where you can type in a question that we can answer either live during the webinar, or we can type a response to you. And then you can also use the chat window. The chat feature will show that you can chat to one of the fellow attendees. If you see somebody you know, like I just saw Brenda Lockwood's name, I could send her a chat and say, "Hi, Brenda. Nice to see you on here." You could also chat message to the panelists and the webinar attendees. You can see how you can play that around. Okay, so the poll, let me see what the, I'm going to hit end polling and share results, and you will now see that the majority of folks are social workers, case manager, or practitioner. That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. Is wonderful. Thank you so much for calling in. We've got a good share of others. So use that chat window and type in what other means. We've got some education, university partners, supervisors, and other leadership. Excellent. Great. Parent partners, life coaches, case counselors, evaluation, fabulous.
Okay, let's get started. So the agenda for this morning is really for us to look into coaching as an approach to case management, as differentiated from the way that we've always done case management in our past. And then we're going to get into the FLAIR model, which is an acronym that we will further explain.
Okay, so Tammy and I are going to go back and forth with this webinar. We're going to now do another polling question just to try this out. we'd love to find out where you work. Child welfare, probation, eligibility, APS, and other. Please let us know. Oh, good, we have a student here also with us. Dina, I'm glad. It's always nice to see students join professional development opportunities. We've got child welfare seems to be in the house. Okay. So we're going to say, again, type in that chat window and let us know what other means to you. The majority of folks here are from child welfare. We've got a few eligibility. Last month, we had a lot of probation, so that's interesting. There we go, TANF. I almost wrote TANF in there. Great, lots of TANF. Oh, that's so great. Excellent. Okay, the next thing we'd like for you to do is to go to the Q&A section. So move away from the chat for a minute, go to the Q&A section just to make sure you know where it is and where to find it. And type in you're not going to actually ask a question. We would like for you to ask a question or a statement about what you'd like to get out of today's webinar. So what are you hoping from today's webinar? And if you could put that in the Q&A tab of the Zoom technology, that would be great. We just want to make sure you know where that's at so that you can use it throughout the webinar. We've got learning strategies to increase member buy-in, making the switch from case management to coaching, learn as much as possible to help better understand clients, broaden my knowledge of coaching, fabulous. Tools to use with clients, wonderful, wonderful. Understanding how coaching models can be implemented in the human services field, enhancing coaching skills. Perfect, great, excellent. We've also got learn more about coaching, networking with other states and counties. Excellent. Thank you so much. We will hope to get to most of these questions and we'll revisit at the end of the webinar to see how we've done.
Okay, so what is coaching? I think we want to talk about coaching that specifically has techniques that are different than the way you've always done business. And so there are about 3 different kinds of coaching that we will mix, and next slide, please. And that we will, we have blended these 3 types of coaching into one. And skills-based coaching, that's particularly what we'll be talking about. But there are also coaching models that are about life coaching. The whole question of what am I going to do with my life when I grow up, and then executive or leadership coaching. UCD uses a skills-based model which hails from the field of education, really focusing on skills, improving skills, and a system of observation and demonstration and feedback about that process. As you probably are aware, executive and leadership coaching is really about leaders and administrators. That's about becoming more leader-like according to all of the different ways that we are taught to be leaders these days. And then we would like to also talk about the differences between these different coaching models, and the research or the evaluation of one may be very different from others. Again, the understanding the nuances and best interventions for the field of human services is really what we're hoping to get to. So the definition of coaching, one of the definitions of coaching: human development process, structured, focused interaction, appropriate strategies, tools, techniques to promote change for the benefit of the learner and potentially for other stakeholders. This is really a very specific kind of coaching. I think in our, at least where I'm from and in my workings with other professionals, I think coaching has become a catch-all kind of phrase for it's meant to up the game on supervision or working with clients. If we talk about coaching, it somehow means that we're doing a better job. But truly what we're talking about is a specific process, that it's planful, that it's about particular strategies, using tools, and trying to get to those changes that we would like for clients to get to, using more than the usual kind of case management that we have used in the past. So case management is about fixing problems. And we work hard to try to figure out, like, okay, so that didn't work. What can we do? And the whole idea of offering different strategies or suggestions or even pleading with clients to make changes. But coaching is really about transformation. As case managers, we have typically been responsible for coordinating and managing resources, and we just keep offering more and more resources. But the focus is on the assessment of the need and advocacy to meet those needs. Traditionally, the case manager is the planner, the resource coordinator, and also then the evaluator. But we are suggesting that using coaching in this very particular way will shift your focus and take it to a higher level, to that of transformation and evoking transformation. It's deeper than looking for solutions and making referrals and pleading with clients to make the needed changes. It's not something extra, but it's instead of. It's really about knowing the when and the where of when you can do coaching and when you can use this new skill or these techniques to add to what you're already doing, not something extra. It's more of a instead of, at the right time and place.
Excellent. Thanks, Tammy. We look at, have looked to David Rock for some inspiration and leadership in the implementation of coaching. He has written several books and is CEO of the Neuro Leadership Institute. He's written a book called Quiet Leadership, and we pull some, lots of our information, knowledge has come from his work in the field of coaching. And he talks a lot about how coaching lives in the land of asking questions and looking for solutions. You can see there's a continuum from problem focused to solution focused, and asking questions versus telling people the answer. And coaching is really asking and asking for what the solutions are. One thing that we talk about in our work with social workers and leadership is that when we are focused on problems and focused on advice giving or telling, that's kind of the opposite of coaching. And a lot of times it's where we find ourselves. It's really, really difficult to not dive into fixing the problems and focusing on what needs to change, and then giving out information on how people should change, and what looks like a lot of advice, and telling people the answer. It's not necessarily, we don't frame it that we're telling them what to do, but we have a lot of answers. And the reality is we have a lot of really good ideas about how people can change, and what changes would lead to a better life for them. And we do it from a really well-meaning place, but it is, at the end of the day, telling people and giving advice. David Rock talks about, he has a metaphor that he's created for the box of problems, and that if the coach is focused on the box of problems, then we're often focused on advice and giving answers. In our work in human services, our case managers, our child welfare practitioners, social workers sometimes have a hard time not diving into that box of problems, right? Not helping people dissect what's in the box and what should be there and what shouldn't be there. And sometimes they go in and try to rearrange that box of problems and move in and fix that box of problems. And it's really, really difficult to stay out of it. But that as coaches and using a coaching approach, we would be more focused on wondering how our clients are thinking about that box of problems and what they believe the solutions to that box of problems are, not that we're going to go in and dive into it and fix it. And I just want to make sure, we just had a text that said, perhaps not everybody can hear. Okay, good, excellent, thanks.
Shannon.
Okay.
So again, what we're talking about is an approach that it's not like we're going to get rid of everything we always knew about case management, but rather add to our bag of tricks in doing this, what can be very, very hard work. And as Nancy said, when we want to problem solve for clients so very badly because we're good at it. That's what we've always done. And so staying out of the box and providing all of those solutions that we've experienced in our careers is really hard to do. But this idea of a different approach with clients could, what we believe, result in improved outcomes for the people that we work with.
Okay, so we have another poll here, which is about giving advice. How often do you give advice? This poll, you can actually select multiple responses instead of just one. It's kind of a slice of humor and how difficult sometimes it is to stay away from that box of problems. Excellent. Thank you all for participating. A couple of last minute folks are putting in some answers. Okay, one last click. Choose another couple of answers. I'm going to end the polling here and right now. Okay, so you can see the results. Probably too much, most likely too often. We've got some people, my heart goes out to you. I'm such a good fixer. I believe I'm a really good fixer too. I ask lots and lots glad to see lots of people ask good open-ended questions. And then the time crunch, the last one. I want to ask more questions but struggle with the time crunch. It is really difficult sometimes. And it's, thank you for your honesty. Sometimes it's hard to really believe that asking questions is better than giving advice. That makes a lot of, we share the same struggles oftentimes.
So Nancy, you're saying that I'm supposed to be asking questions instead of telling you how to do your job?
I am. That is what we suggest.
So here's the FLAIR model that UC Davis has created to help us think about this process that we're in. So the F stands for click.
There you go.
Setting the foundation, really getting solid on what the foundation is and using these skills and understanding the difference between coaching and coaching within case management as a particular skill. The L, look for coachable moments. We will talk later about that clients and the families that we work with will offer you these pearls that if you can recognize them can be a coachable moment rather than giving them the answers. Because how many times have you been involved in a case plan with a family and you cannot figure out why they're not engaging in accomplishing the goals or completing the activities that you've set out for them? Well, perhaps there are moments when we can think about coaching through that rather than getting to the why aren't you? The A is for action, moving to the work, moving through and the actual coaching process. Reflecting on what the work has been about. We often don't take enough time to do that, to reflect on our work, to talk about what worked, what didn't work, how we might do it differently, but that's how to build skills. And so taking time to reflect on the way that you are working with families, we believe is beneficial to the entire helping process with a family. And then finally, exploring the learning. What was learned from the process? How did what you did with a client help them to move forward? And then how do you do the same thing in the future? Nancy, did I miss anything there?
No, I think that was great. The FLAIR model is it's a combination, as Tammy said before, of skills-based coaching and what we've learned from executive leadership or life coaching, where we know that as practitioners in human services, we are looking for outcomes, right? We are looking for what the learning is. We are looking for change that is outcomes, improving outcomes is the name of this game. And we are in this coaching business to really impact for the better the lives of the clients that we work with. We're going to dive into each part of this coaching model. We're going to go through it pretty quickly for the next 30 minutes, but we want to give you a taste for what each stage of this model looks like. So F is setting the foundation. Coaches, we believe, need a foundation both in the knowledge of coaching and of human behavior growth and learning to be able to coach. And here we're again talking about the individual practitioners, those who are working directly with clients. So there's a knowledge base that they need to know. There's also a certain belief mindset that having a coaching approach to case management requires. We're going to briefly cover some of these. And again, this is a plug for our webinar next month, which is really going to dive into this topic of brain-based coaching. What we know is that no two brains are alike. We are all different, how we think, what we believe, how our brains work, or what our brains how we use them is very, very different. Yet we know that our brains work the same. My brain, your brain, the function of the brain is very, very similar. In fact, it is the same, and it impacts our behavior and our choices and how we behave in life. We know, and we'll dive into this next month, that there are parts of our brain, primarily the prefrontal cortex, right? Our neocortex, our thinking part of the brain, is where we are really focused on trust, engagement, learning. We are looking for rewards. Our prefrontal cortex is engaged in critical thinking and in making choices and decisions when we feel we are in the right place of learning, when we have the ability to really stop and think about the situation. And the conditions that allow our prefrontal cortex to work are things like trust and engagement, right? We can perform better when our prefrontal cortex is in control. There are other parts of our brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, that are really in charge of the fight or flight mechanism of looking for threats. And when we feel threatened or distrustful, then our brain has a hard time learning. Our prefrontal cortex is sort of robbed of some of the energy required to learn, and we go into habits and we withdraw. And when we're threatened, our learning shuts down, and it really, really impacts our ability to do new things. Our prefrontal cortex might be, responsible for things like thinking, reflection, judgment, and self-reflection. Our hindbrain is more focused on emotions, reactions, and the fight or flight mechanism. I heard this recently that our amygdala is like the smoke alarm for our brain, and it is constantly looking for smoke. We are oftentimes scanning the environment for threats. And this knowledge is important both for the case practitioner and for the client as well, because the job is all about self-regulation. And how do we regulate as coaches to look for these threats both in ourselves and in others, and then work with people on an individual basis. And this we'll dive into this next month. What we know is that the antidotes for threat are trust, empathy, and support. And that the belief mindset of coaches are to really tap into empathy, support, and to have a keen eye, to be very, very focused on trust and building trust. And coaches really look on building trust. What I'd love for you to do is to take a minute as we start moving into the next section and jot down one insight you've had so far, just even in the last 30 minutes, about coaching or how you'd like to integrate coaching into your work with clients. We're going to do this pretty quickly, but just an invitation to reflect for a few seconds.
So then just when do we do this? When is the right time? How do we look for coachable moments? That's the idea of when you're going to do the work of coaching. Again, we believe it's an approach to case management. It's how you can work with the families and the clients that you work with, but that we're looking for those moments when a client would say something to you that you think, okay, here I go. And you won't have the luxury of being able to Google it. We have become so dependent on that we have answers everywhere. We just have to ask the question. This is really about you being present in the moment with the people that you're working with. And as they offer you feedback about whatever is going on in their world, it's about you being able to recognize how you then feed that back to them, that has them do the thinking about what's going on. So sometimes, safety feels so much heavier. It's hard to not feel the weight of the mission of what are our critical jobs. We have taken on jobs that are about people, and that makes it heavy. And so once our fear kicks in, and when we start thinking about what's the next thing I should be saying, what do I need to say next, their fear kicks in. It's then that our amygdalas are talking to one another. So we need to get away from either or thinking and move to less fixing and letting go of that piece that makes us what's her name? Nancy, Olivia Pope, fixing everything. Give me a problem and I'll fix it. So if we can't get out of that fixing idea, we're going to be freaked out. The family, the client's going to be freaked out, and we're not getting to where we need to get.
We like to talk about in our classes the TV show Scandal. The Olivia Pope references to the TV show Scandal, where she is a self-proclaimed fixer and has the gladiators that work with her. Sometimes we all like to tap into our inner fixers. And if you watch the show, it doesn't actually work out that well.
No, ever. It doesn't. Yeah, that's exactly right. So silence with the client, there's a comment about silence with the client, or what do I say next? It's where we go. It's what we've been used to. And so this idea about thinking about doing things different, it is going to feel uncomfortable, unnatural, but I assure you that if you try and you can get yourself to live through those silences and ask a question, wait for the answer, that it just gets more comfortable, just like everything else. So, these moments that we're talking about, growing, changing, transforming, they're all around us. What we want to think about is upregulating, and how we do that is to be authentic, to really think about relationship. We say it all the time, relationship, 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 seeking to understand. We all know these phrases. We've been in lots of workshops or lots of training where we know that, but somehow what happens when we put it into practice is we go back to what we've always known. So being truthful and empathetic in a genuine way where you're focused on the client is where we need to get.
Okay, we are cruising through the FLAIR model. So after the setting the foundation and looking for coachable moments, we're in the move to action area. So this is one of my favorite parts of talking about coaching, and interestingly has been one of the hardest to learn and dive into, which is really a lot about goal setting. So how do we help clients and workers, all humans, everyone, how do we help people set meaningful goals and then actually take emotion and move to reaching those goals? We know that goals, we're looking to help people fly, right? We are looking to help people become better, do better. We're looking at for ourselves of how do we change and grow in the way that Tammy was just talking about. We are also, I just love this picture, it's just so cute. We are also looking for help, right? For somebody to give us the guidance on how do we move into into change. And it's hard, and helping people set goals and then actually reach those goals is not an easy thing to do. And what we've learned over the last many years is that we might, in our field, need to hit the shift key. We might need to shift a little bit in the way that we talk about goals and the way that we work with people. And I have a hard time saying clients, because when we talk about coaching in our work, we talk about the learner as the person who is receiving the coaching. And anybody can be the learner. It can be the client, it can be you, it can be me, it can be the boss. Everybody can be the learner, but we need to look at how we shift our way of looking at goals and helping people move to action. So we love smart people and we love SMART goals. And we have here in Northern California and all across California, we talk a lot about the SMART goal system. We're going to ask you a poll question to see how much, if this is new to you, if this is something that you also do in your agency. So there's a poll question, your agency and SMART goals. And don't worry, if you've never heard of SMART, we are going to talk about it real quickly. So we will spend, let you have about 10 more seconds to make to write down an answer, type in an answer, I should say. Okay, we're gonna end the polling, share the results. Okay, so we love our SMART goals. So about half of you here say that SMART goals are something that you really use in your agency. Yeah, we sort of use them sometimes. That sounds pretty familiar, 31% of you. And then what does SMART stand for again? That's other 30%. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And what research has found is that SMART goals are goals that are achieved. If you would like to set a goal, if you would like to run a marathon in 6 months from now, although I don't know why you would want to, but if you choose to run a marathon in 6 months from now, it would behoove you to make sure that your goal was SMART, that you had it specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and it was time bound. Those are qualities of coaches that at least the field of child welfare have really embraced. that when our work with clients, we want to make sure when we work with them to set a goal that it is a SMART goal. Well, what we have found and what we have looked at in the recent past is that SMART goals sometimes just isn't enough. And that sometimes what we have done is lost the emotional connection to the goal that it is that we're working with clients or others in setting. That there isn't a heartfelt connection to the goal that has been written down. And sometimes our goals with clients look pretty bureaucratic. Our case plan goals are pretty dry and don't have much of an emotional connection to them. So Mark Murphy with the Leadership IQ has put out that perhaps what we should look for is hard goals in lieu of SMART goals, that they're heartfelt, animated, required, and difficult. Some of the verbiage here says company, and it really could just be your life. So a required goal is my goal are absolutely necessary to help my family, my children, right? My community. That they cannot just be smart. That smart is good, but they also need to be hard. Here you've got a heart and a brain. We need to link what we know about the qualities of good goals, and we need to make sure that the heart is attached to them. And sometimes we don't do that very well. Sometimes we assume that the goal that we're working with clients is already worthwhile, that they are bought in, that they want that goal. And we breathe through that pretty fast, and it's not necessarily enough.
And Nancy,
yeah.
Nancy, worse yet is we create the goal for the client rather
Yes.
than having the client create their own goals.
Yes, yes. And we assume that they want it just as much
Right.
as we want it for them. Yeah. Yeah, this is it has been a very, very difficult part of our learning and coaching is how to talk about goals and make them meaningful. And it's become one of my favorite sections of our coaching classes is to really think about how to transform our own notion about goal setting and how to work with people on an emotional level and helping them to grow and transform and change. We encourage you to look at the WHOOP model. You can Google WHOOP goal setting on the internet and you will find a wealth of information. It is very much research-based and the research, it's very compelling. It stands for Wish Outcome Obstacle Plan. It's something that we talk about in our classes of a way to help people look at goal setting a little bit differently. This wish part is worthy of noting that you really have to find that emotional connection, and then you go through a series of steps to help people really move to that action. If you have not heard of it, we encourage you to look at it and to really think about how you can work with clients in a different way and incorporating some of that information. And I'm looking at the time, and so I'm starting to go a little bit faster. So we know that a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? And how we help clients move into their transformation perhaps needs to be shifted a little bit in our work.
So in the FLAIR model, we've gotten to R. R stands for reflection. And what we're suggesting is that this work with clients, that you take the time in order to stop, reflect on your work, to think and consider how you're working with a client, what that looks like, to if you're someone who goes on autopilot, that you really pause and take time to reflect on your work and be more planful about your work, and that will ultimately help, rather than what happens is in our hustle and bustle to get the job done, we move pretty quickly. And it's the reflective time that if we take, perhaps even journal what's going on with you as a clinician or a practitioner, can help you to continue to grow in this process. And lastly, the E stands for evaluate. What does it, all of a sudden I forgot. Click. Explore the learning. gosh, I wanted to do evaluation for some reason. Explore the learning, to really think about what the client has learned, to ask them, to have them feed back to you. It's a part of that whole reflection, to feed back to you what they think they have learned. That gives you insight into where you're at in this process, the change process, and thinking about if things need to change with regard to the goals, or whether you're still on the right path in terms of your work with clients. So after you've been practicing, these are the kinds of things that you can ask your client. What have you learned? And pause, give them time to think about it. Another question, what was an aha moment? When did things start to click for you? Have them reflect back on, in what ways have you increased your own ability to handle the situation? It really, it speaks to things like resilience. If they have gotten through this hard time, in thinking about how they handled it, how then they can handle it in the future by applying those same kinds of strategies and techniques that they did to get through this. So when and where are you going to review this plan you've committed to really get to the when and the where and how, so that it isn't something that sounds good when they're with you, but something that gets torn apart and laid out so that they know exactly what to try, when to try, and how to try.
Excellent. So, Tammy, we just had Stacy wrote in on the chat box that when we're involved with child welfare, this is moving off a little bit of the explore the learning, but I still think it's interesting at this time, is when we're involved with child welfare, the goal is for the kids to go home, and they have to complete everything on their court order, and often do not want to be in those services. Yeah. And it's such an interesting dilemma where, I mean, that is such an emotional, heartfelt goal, right? Get your kids back, right? Like I want to be reunified with my children. And yet the way that we approach it sometimes, somehow interestingly seems to we don't talk about that enough sometimes. Yeah. I think that it becomes very much more like, here's the court order and here are the services. Coaching, I think, allows for, and even in this exploring the learning conversation, allows for more conversation about what is the client, what transformations are the client going through, what are they learning, what are they changing, what are they doing differently?
And I think what I have seen and experienced is that if we put coaching, if we engage in coaching up front, and what happens from that coaching process informs the court order, that's when it can really make a difference. I mean, you're absolutely right. Unless in your system court orders are boilerplate, what we're really talking about is using coaching up front to help the client explore how they get their kids back and what process they're going to go through to do that. And then that becomes the goal, which then turns into a court order. And then that's what you discuss, that there isn't two processes going on, but rather one. You know, the services, you know, one of the things we teach here at our academy is the goal comes before the services, that the services have to be about what the goal is. And lots of times we get into our go-to services that you have to complete this, you have to, you know, like we have these ideas about what we've always done, but what we have started to think about is really taking the time to set the goal, like in the FLAIR model, that if we take time to do the goal, the right goal for this client in their situation, then you look for activities and services that support the parent completing their goal, rather than putting the services first and then hoping that the goal gets accomplished by the service, but really reversing those two things. the goal about how the family thinks they're going to get their kids back and what the process is going to be, and then services that help them accomplish the goal that they have set for themselves.
Well, and I love some of these questions that are on the screen, because sometimes we know that in our efforts to achieve a goal, sometimes we don't always, it's not a linear process, right? We don't say we're going to complete this goal and we then go after it and immediately have success. And for practitioners to take a moment to say things like, what have you learned? Even if there's been a relapse or a failure or a step that wasn't taken, what have you done to increase your ability to handle this situation? You know, what was an aha moment that you had, even if it wasn't in a step in the right direction, but what have you learned to date that will help you continue to move towards the goal? Some of those open-ended questions is what really can, I think, enhance our work with clients on an individual basis and really, you know, build that trust. It comes back sort of full circle to the setting the foundation of really keeping an eye on building trust, and how can we have a transparent and authentic dialogue with clients that will support them in their eventual transformation that sometimes doesn't look like a straight line. That sometimes takes a little bit of time. We've got a comment here. It says, great strategy in helping clients to become unstuck, to refocus.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep, that's exactly it.
I think it would be great if everybody took just 2 seconds. We're going to move into a Q&A section as we close the webinar. But if you open up the Q&A box, or you can do it in the chat box, it's either one is easiest for you, and think about what you have learned in the last 51 minutes, or an aha moment that you've had in the last 51 minutes that you'd be willing to share. I think an aha moment I've had is that I love working with Tammy Sandoval.
Oh, Nancy, you know what the aha moment for me is when we were starting to get comments about you're moving too fast, slow down.
Yeah.
We tried to do so much in an hour.
We tried to do a little bit too much. That is true.
Telling and advising the opposite of coaching is so true. There's a mantra. There's the short version of what we just spent 50 minutes talking about.
Yeah. That's funny.
Do you have any suggestions on books for goal models?
We've got a comment, good suggestions on books for goal models. The WHOOP model, I love the WHOOP model. Anything written by David Rock is great.
How to
we've got
accountability. Dario, do you mean accountability? You mean accountability with the client, right? How to coach accountability? You know, I think it's the reflection. It's the coming back, and you know, it's like an open-ended question that sounds sort of like, how is that? I know I sound like Dr. Phil, but how is that working for you? How you know, in the process of getting to goals and working the goals, how is it working? What's working? What isn't working? Why do you think that might be? Or why not? And I think the word accountability has become like, you know, like, I don't know, it's like a naughty word, you know, but honestly, it's just about the what are you doing? Why are you doing is it working? If it's not working, what else can be done? I think it's just the keep asking of the questions. You know, one of the things we say in coaching is stay curious. Stay curious about, you know, in your work with clients, rather than coming off as, you know, the person who's had, you know, 30 years, 20 years, 10 years of experience in working with clients, that every time you work with a new client, a new family, their situation is not the same as anything that you've ever gone through. And so staying curious about how things work in their family.
We just had a comment that one of the invites that they saw for the webinar had us going until noon for, it was a 2-hour webinar, and it's scheduled for 1 hour. So we are ending in 6 minutes. So just wanted to let everybody know in case you had a 2-hour block for this. It's a 1-hour webinar. Let's see. We've got lots of aha moments. Our goals before services. Don't be on autopilot. Let's see. Great. What other questions do you have that you'd like for us to answer in the next few minutes?
While you're thinking of that, I would say that, you know, we talk a lot about engagement. In every training we have, we talk about engagement. But what I've learned by learning coaching and using coaching is by asking the question and truly letting the client be their own expert, that is engagement. It's like that you set aside all of what you know, stay curious, and that in and of itself helps engagement.
Great. So we've got a question, or was an expectation at the beginning, or a question if we were going to cover is services are provided for trauma-informed, and are they effective? So Sandra asked a question. I'm assuming it's what coaching services are provided for trauma-informed. And we do talk a lot in our coaching about being trauma-informed. And I guess I'm not totally sure what the question is. Tammy, do you think what would you add to that?
Which would the empower the client for engagement?
Well, no, it was if the services are provided for trauma-informed, and are they effective? I guess I started answering it, and I realized I'm not totally sure I understand the question. So Sandra Sandoval, if you want to clarify, or if Tammy, if you want to take a stab at that.
I think we really are talking about services, and we didn't spend a lot of time talking about services in this particular webinar, but instead talked about engaging clients through this method of coaching. And so I think we're talking apple to oranges, but what I would say based on what I know about trauma-informed practice is that services that are trauma-informed are absolutely effective. And that's what we should always be striving for, because that's truly what's happened, is that, you know, we're working with clients who have been exposed to adverse childhood experiences. And so we need to have strategies and services and interventions that deal with adverse childhood experiences. So I guess I'm answering your question, but it's not particular to coaching. It's not, you know, specific to coaching. Coaching is used to engage and get to goals whereby clients will change. Trauma-informed services are the activities to help them accomplish their goals.
We have a question around any specifics around coaching with clients who are substance involved. It's a good question. At its heart, coaching is, well, the foundation. We've got the knowledge and beliefs of the coach. So if our practitioners understand, you know, sort of the basics of human behavior, and also maintain the belief and growth mindset of a coach, which is, you know, a very intense belief in people's ability to grow and change and make transformations. If those two pieces are there, you're number one. That is how you coach clients who are substance involved, is having that foundation. We also believe and know that regardless of what your client is struggling with, substances or something else, open-ended questions are powerful and can be asked of anybody, regardless of what their specific challenges are. We do have, as a key foundational skill of most of our coaches, is motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing is something that we know just really works, especially with clients who are substance involved. So we have really focused our coaching sort of based around some of the key tenets of growth, change, and transformation. And please, Alexis, come to some of our classes and we'll dive into more of that subject. So we've got 1 minute to wrap up. We are so happy that all of you came and spent an hour with us talking about coaching clients in human services. If you visit our website, Google search or search the UC Davis Northern California Training Academy, you'll find us. On the front page, there is a tab you can click. There's I believe it's this picture that you see on your screen of a seedling that talks about our webinar, coaching webinar series, and you'll see all of the dates and registration information for the webinars. Our next one, I believe it's in April, maybe April 14th, is on brain-based coaching. We also have one on cultivating resilience in May. And then in June, we are wrapping up in partnership with the Child Welfare League of America on for our final grand finale webinar on coaching and human services. If you visit our website, you'll be able to find a link to view the recording of this webinar. So thank you all very, very much for your time. We appreciate it, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a good day.